Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds. We welcome our friends in South Africa, the United States, and around the world to this week's edition of A Conversation with El-Hajj Mauri Saalakhan. I'm pleased to be your host, coming to you once again through the Salam Media Network out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Salam Media is an online portal for humanitarian journalism. We don't just report the news, we advise you on what you can do about it. For today's program, we will be in conversation with three action-oriented, deep thinkers. Our sister, Dr. Nadia Ahmad, a professor of law at Yale University. Sara Flounders, the director of the New York-based International Action Center, and Heena Lotus, an independent journalist and geopolitical analyst. Now, Heena is a first-timer with us, so we want to welcome her along with the others with a warm welcome indeed. Now, all three will be invited to weigh in on a thought-provoking two-part question. And that question is, what has your attention and why? Now, there are going to be a number of other questions that will follow this one, but this is the central question. What has your attention and why? And my sister Nadia, she said that she was going to be tied up with something that may cause her to run a bit late. So we'll just kind of play it by ear. And hopefully she will, if she is not with us now, she will be with us soon. But let's go on and get the conversation started, I should say, with who is ready to go. This is going to be a very important conversation. Let's just bring them on screen, brother. Salams to Heena Lotus, a first-timer with the Salam Media Network, and Sara. Is Sara with us, Brother Sadiq? Okay, let's begin with Heena Lotus. What is on your mind? What has your attention right now, and why? Why does whatever it is, why does it have your attention? Heena.
Well, salam, and first and foremost, I'm very humbled to be here, so thank you so much for inviting me. This is actually a very, very important question, and I'm glad that you are bringing on a multitude of different sisters from different backgrounds and different, organizations with different careers to have this discussion. For me, if I was to answer this question, I would say what's on my mind is the fact that we are, I am Muslim. It's something that's very, very deeply important to me and something that I use as a force to guide me when it comes to my journalism, when it comes to my analysis, when I am discussing politics, when I'm discussing journalism. I make mistakes. I'm not perfect by any means. I am human. Thank goodness Allah is merciful and forgiving. But I try to look at everything that I do, everything that I say, and everything that's going on through the lens of Islam. And I've noticed that in the Western world specifically, especially in the world of journalism and everything going on geopolitically, I have noticed that there's a disconnect between applying Islamic morals, values, and ethics into our careers and the lens in which we are teaching, preaching, advocating for things, our journalism, our analysis. I feel like if we are to look at everything going on through the lens of Islam, the answers will be right there. And I think it's that disconnect that's kind of creating the separation and fragmentation in the ummah.
Indeed. Nadia, what has your attention right now and why?
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum. I think for me, I'm looking back at the 25 years of post 9/11, which is what we're going to be looking at this year. And I think we look back at what we have lost. Saw over 1,000 people who disappeared. There was really no account of them, and it was only through protests and by inquiries that we were able to get a better picture of what was happening. And that was only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the lead up that went into the. I think we're seeing that same dynamic happen again and emerge when we see what's happening in Gaza, as well as the assaults on Iran.
Before we move to Sarah, I just want to make a special note. I recently had the privilege of being present at Yale University for Nadia's PhD dissertation defense. And she easily impressed and impressively clinched it. So again, we want to publicly say congratulations to Nadia for that achievement. Now we have Sara Flounders, a good friend that goes back a good number of years with me in New York City at a certain trial that we're going to be referencing before this broadcast ends. But what's on your mind these days? What's dominating your thoughts these days, Sara? And why?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here and part of this conversation. And congratulations again to Nadia. I was also sharing that event by Zoom, which is, what's new today in terms of instant communication. But what's been on my mind is the incredible power of Iran to actually defend itself, defend its sovereignty in the face of an overwhelming U.S. attack, assassination of its leadership, including the Imam Ali Khamenei, the whole leadership of Iran, and the announcement that now Iran would totally surrender, and the ability of Iran to use its high-tech weapons, highly sophisticated, very inexpensively produced in the many tens of thousands, has changed history. There is a new world order today, and the U.S. bases that dominated West Asia have been one by one destroyed. And this is not me saying it. This is NBC News and the New York Times and all of the corporate media says 16 of the 18 top U.S. bases, air and naval bases, are out of commission in the region. And this is a new day. I'm so glad that Nadia opened on where we were 25 years ago with the thousands disappeared. And we know the tens of thousands in Palestine today who have disappeared under the rubble, unaccounted for, and in Lebanon and in Iran. And yet the ability of the U.S. to maintain U.S. imperialism, to maintain its control is past. And there's nothing that they can do to reassert it. They've lost it economically, and they tried to reassert it using their biggest weapons, and they failed. So this is a new complex period that we're in, but I think it's very different. And I do think it's a new opportunity for the sovereignty of countries to be asserted. That's a real new event.
Yeah, complex indeed. And Sarah, on that note, the United States of America is about to mark 250 years of existence. What does this symbolize for you? And I want you to respond to that question, and then we'll hear from the other two ladies for today's conversation on that same question. What does 250 years, an anniversary that is about to be marked in just a few days, what does that mean for you?
Well, it's really 250 years of genocide against the indigenous peoples of the U.S. and the entire Western Hemisphere, or war. It means 250 years of enslavement of African people. It means 250 years of aggressive expansion, regardless of the human cost. And I think those days it will not be met with a patriotic wave that was true in an earlier time. And that's important, although it's not a complete change. But the idea that simple patriotism can be whipped up by pushing a button, and the most reactionary and racist response would be automatic. I don't think they can push that button in the same way, because conditions of life are deteriorating here sharply, and that is increasingly recognized. So I think this is a celebration misplaced, horrifically expensive, jingoistic, militaristic, and meant to whip up a climate. I don't think it will succeed.
Mm-hmm. Heena, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think thank you so much for your words, Sarah. A lot of what she said is, sentiments that I would actually echo. We have to remember that this is a country that was built on genocide. It was built on slavery. It was built on segregation. It was built on discrimination. It was built on bloodshed. It was built on marginalization, oppression. And when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, because that is something that I tend to specialize in, even when it comes to U.S. foreign policy, colonialism rebranded itself, especially after the First World War, and it turned into U.S. imperialism. And I think with the help of NATO and Western allies, the U.S. hasn't just subjugated people within its own country, it subjugated people from all around the world. In a multitude of different ways. We're seeing it right now with Palestine. We're seeing it right now with Iran. We, just saw what happened with Venezuela. We see, the embargoes and the suffering going on in Cuba. And I think, there's that term that people have, started using very liberally, the imperialist boomerang. We're seeing effects of that right now. Just as everyone, in the US, a multitude of different people remain silent to all the oppression that was going on internally and externally, it's starting to affect people economically. It's starting to affect people emotionally. It's starting to affect people through, various different programs like ICE. And now that everything is coming back home, the chickens have, come home to roost, per se. I think that all the silence, all the apathy, all the blind patriotism is catching up with the people who, at the very end of the day, were silent and complicit to all the suffering that was going on, not just in an internal matter, but in an external matter. I think people are starting to realize that this isn't something we can necessarily vote our way out of. This isn't something that has to do with a specific politician. This is just the MO in how the US has functioned. And now that it's affecting individuals directly, I think it's going to, inshallah, change the consciousness and allow people to understand that what we do overseas and what we do internally will always affect everyone at the end of the day, regardless of race, religion, creed, gender, and so on.
Indeed. Now, you are in Florida.
Correct.
And Florida is widely viewed as a Republican stronghold. What is the conversation like in the state of Florida, given everything that's happening right now, the pressures on the cult leader in the White House, what appears to be a tremendous amount of division and debate within his MAGA cult. What's the conversation like in the state of Florida right now?
I think there's a lot of disconnect. There's a lot of apathy. I've noticed that most people here are complaining about gas prices. Everyone is noticing how it's affecting, employment rates and things of that nature, but they're not connecting the fact that it's a byproduct of decisions that were made with U.S. foreign policy. And I think, it's very interesting to me because this is something that I study and follow like a hawk. And to be surrounded by people who complain about how it affects them on an individual level, yet, they're not able to put together that this is a byproduct of the government. This is a byproduct of their decisions. It's a byproduct of, the collective, and what is going on overseas is just very interesting to me, right? Because what we do overseas, where we're investing our money with like the military industrial complex, where we're investing, our taxes, is going to affect people directly. And as opposed to kind of putting together the fact that, hey, this is because of what's going on in Palestine, this is what's going on in Iran, this is because of what's, going on where all the taxes are being funded. People think that, they just have high gas prices because that's that. I don't even think they've connected that it's their ringleader Trump's fault. And I don't even like to blame it on Trump per se. I think it's a system. Anyone could have been in Trump's place and we'd still be in the same position, because U.S. foreign policy under all presidents, to be candid, especially in the last few decades, has been very, very bloody.
Indeed, it has been. But there's also an undeniable phalanx, for lack of a better word, of power brokers within the Republican Party, the driving force within the Republican Party, these billionaires and organizations, like the individuals that were behind, I should say, that are behind the Project 2025 agenda, who are also the driving force for much of what we're witnessing today. It's really heartbreaking to see, but subhanAllah, it is what it is, and it's something that we are going to have to deal with as effectively as we possibly can in the days ahead. I'm feeling a bit of optimism over the fact that largely because of the Epstein files controversy, there is this growing fissure within the MAGA cult, and it has begun to spill over into some other areas of concern. But with that being said, let's hear from you, Nadia, on this question.
I think when I'm looking at 250 years, I'm also thinking that in like the history of laws and even history of civilization, 250 years isn't that long. If you actually look if you look at civilization, if you look at the Hammurabi's Code, that's over 3,800 years old. And we remember Hammurabi's Code for eye for an eye, but I think that one of the key parts of the opening part of it are about accusations and proof, and that's what has really been missing from the laws that have been brought forward. So whether it's about weapons of mass destruction and these false claims that are made up as false pretense to go and invade other sovereign countries, I think that we have to also look at this idea from Hammurabi's Code about accusations and proof. And when we look at the very first laws that were created, it says that you can't really accuse a man, and you can't prove the charge. And so that's really the penalty that falls on the person who's making this accusation. And I think that the war on terror really threw away the proof of before punishment, and really it was just that, you just go in and then you figure out and make up facts afterwards. And I think that's really a casualty that has happened as a result of 250 years of U.S. Like rules, law building, empire building, and I think we're right now seeing a collapse of that state, and it's happening not just overseas but also within the U.S.
Indeed, it is. How does the Trump administration, Nadia, compare to other administrations in recent American political history? How does it compare in your view?
There's a bit more volatility in the Trump administration versus in the Bush administration. I think with the during the second Bush administration, we thought we saw quite a bit of madness, but I think during the second Trump term, there's more volatility than we have seen in prior administrations. But I also think if we go back and we look at administrations of Obama and Biden, we see continued drone fare and the resurgence of drone fare especially during the Obama years. He was just better able to sugarcoat it and provide better rhetoric for it, and people bought it more easily. But it's really the same. It's the same arsenal with just different names and different rhetoric.
Mm-hmm. And Sarah? Sarah, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
I thought you were following with a question.
Yeah.
Or
Your thoughts. Yeah, your thought on that same question. How does the Trump administration compare to past administrations in your view? And I'd also like to know if you are feeling optimistic or pessimistic from what you're seeing, from what we're witnessing right now, in terms of the pushback that's coming from a growing percentage of the American people. Are you feeling optimistic about this?
Well, I'm feeling optimistic about that because Trump's own base is being eroded out from underneath him, and that's good. And there is a growing mobilization of people against him. It's difficult because it's still within the two-party framework. And yeah. Trump and Obama and Biden and Bush and Reagan and Nixon and, we could name it all the way back to George Washington. There was nothing essentially different in terms of being a thoroughly for U.S. institutional corporate dominance on a world scale and a complete lack of concern for the rights overwhelmingly of the population, particularly the most oppressed of every population in the U.S. and worldwide. Worldwide, it's important to recognize that what they've done internationally is what they've done internally. And also, it does boomerang. What they're doing internationally, they fully intend to bring it back here. And we can see that in the ICE raids and kidnappings and roundups into human warehouses of migrant populations, and this country with the largest prison population already in the world, before we even begin to count it's more than 500,000 migrants who've just been grabbed, kidnapped off the streets, sent off into countries they have no connection to. So this is really U.S. policy internationally coming back here. And I don't think it's going to change. I think Trump speaks in crasser, more vulgar terms. Sugarcoating is a good way to describe previous administrations that would say this was all about democracy when it wasn't, or human rights when it wasn't. But Trump puts it right out there. He says, I am a pirate and I negotiate with bombs. Now, the average person isn't used to hearing it put in that crass a way. It means he's desperate to mobilize his own racist base. Whether that will hold anymore, I'm optimistic that there are big changes coming because the U.S. empire is losing its ability economically. It's far surpassed already by China, that the efforts by war on Iran to break the BRICS is not succeeded. So there are a lot of things that are really changing. Now, it does mean, I think, that we'll be in for a rough ride here because, an empire as it goes down tries to take everything with it. They cannot envision the end of their own system, their own empire. They could more envision the end of the planet or life on Earth. So it means they're open to more and more vicious proposals. That's dangerous. That's dangerous. But are they succeeding? No, they're not. And I think we have to take heart in that and know that its days are numbered and history is long. There's new opportunities ahead.
Okay, at this point, we need to take a commercial break, Brother Sadiq, and then inshallah ta'ala, we'll resume the conversation on the other side.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Are you banking with convenience, transparency, and flexibility? With Al Barakah Bank's transactional banking account, you can enjoy convenient everyday banking designed around your needs. Benefit from zero fees on point-of-sale transactions and manage your banking easily through Al Barakah's secure mobile banking app and internet banking platform. From everyday payments to managing your personal or business banking, Al Barakah makes banking simple, transparent, and convenient. Visit albarakah.co.za to learn more. Al Barakah, your partner bank. Al Barakah Bank Limited is an authorized financial services and credit provider.
Hey Gulam.
Yeah?
Did I return your lawnmower last month?
No, bhai, you didn't.
Oh no. Now what'll I do? I wanted to borrow it again, man.
With Randry Jewelers, you won't have to borrow or lend because the prices are so well trimmed on all gold and diamond jewelry. Alternatively, we could remake your old jewelry into a brilliant new design. Visit Randry Jewelers at 151 Stevens Lamini Road, Musgrave, Durban. Randry Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Tonight, a child in a shack will try to sleep through the cold. No heating, no insulation, just thin walls and a biting cold. African Muslims Agency is on the ground, reaching families in informal settlements across South Africa with blankets and winter essentials. Help us spread warmth this winter. For 180 Rand, give a blanket. For 360 Rand, a full winter pack. One gift, one less night in the cold. Africa Muslims Agency. Empowering, educating, inspiring.
Ah, the kitchen, the heart of the home, where memories are made and celebrated. Our go-to place for those freshly stacked pancakes early in the morning or for that late-night snack munchies. We are in there together, cooking, eating, and celebrating life together. Let's keep the kitchen a place that is shared by everyone, where we build stronger bonds and grow together. Sunfoil, now we cooking. Visit nowwecooking.co.za for recipes that everyone can help make.
At Dynasty Islamic, we believe your financial future should grow with purpose and in line with your values. We specialize in Sharia-compliant financial solutions designed to protect, grow, and preserve your wealth. Whether it's investment planning, risk cover, or structuring your legacy, our approach is rooted in transparency, integrity, and ethical principles. Too often, people invest without knowing if their money aligns with their beliefs. At Dynasty Islamic, we change that, offering you clarity, confidence, and peace of mind. Let us help you build a future that's not only financially secure, but spiritually aligned. Dynasty Islamic, where your wealth meets your values. Get in touch with us at info@dynastyislamicfas.co.za, visit www.dynastyislamic.com, or find us on Facebook and Instagram.
Listen to something fresh. Listen to Salam Media.
Welcome back. If you are just joining us, we have an issues and answers oriented conversation going on with three special guests: Sara Flounders of New York City, Heena Lotus of Florida, and Nadia of both of Florida, and she teaches at Yale University as well in New Haven, Connecticut. And just before the break, I asked Sara if she was feeling optimistic or pessimistic regarding where we are right now, and for the future, the near term future in particular. I want to put that same question to you, Heena. Are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic right now behind what we're witnessing here in the United States, not just in terms of all of the negative that's coming from this administration, all of the danger that's coming from this administration that has been magnified to a great extent by the fact that the guardrails that are supposed to be in place for this quote unquote democracy have been failing. We have that on one side, but then on the other side, we have this pushback that we're seeing from large and growing pockets of citizenry in this country that are justifiably concerned, outraged, and are not afraid of allowing this to be seen and heard, despite the enormous blowback that's coming from this very oppressive administration. But with all that being said, are you feeling optimistic or pessimistic about where we are right now and the future of this country?
So I think that's a very interesting question. I'll tell you why. I'm an optimistic person, an idealist through and through, and I think for me that's always going to be my answer. I'm optimistic because I think for every terrible thing that we see in society, every terrible thing that we see in terms of war, oppression, genocide, I think something always comes from it. Right. And there's always a lesson that is learned. I think over the past few years, ever since October 7th, before, I think there's a lot of people who are very on the fence about Palestine. Either they were very pro-Israel or they were very, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know enough. They were very neutral. Now I feel like, anywhere you go, it doesn't matter if it's Florida, if it's Australia, if it's, somewhere in the Swana region, if you're going in Europe, you will find people who through and through support Palestine. They support resistance. They understand the genocide. They see, the oppression. And I think when it comes to domestic matters as well, I think, unfortunately, the climate that I specifically live in, the little suburban area that I live in, Florida, I don't think people have woken up to the magnitude that I would have hoped they would. But that doesn't account for everyone all over the country who is starting to see things. I think the Epstein files being released really shed a lot of light on what the oligarchy does and what, all these various different PACs like AIPAC, how much of a hold they have on government and celebrities, and how, our economic system is directly tied to the oppression that we see, how children are treated, the welfare of women. I think everything is coming to light. And I think there's always a sort of darkness that you see before there's any sort of hope, before there's any sort of liberation, before there's any sort of reform, revolution. I'm not saying that tomorrow everything is going to completely change. Everyone is going to wake up and we're going to have this complete 180 from where we are right now. But I think as long as the truth keeps coming to light and people keep, connecting the dots, as long as people keep advocating in whatever avenue that they work in, whatever avenue that they volunteer in, I think there's always hope for something better to come out of it. Now, am I saying that America collectively as a country is going to get any better? Probably not. I would have to echo Sarah's sentiments. I do think that every sort of hegemony per se has an expiration date, and every single day we're getting closer and closer to it. I think that in itself is something to be, I know this is going to sound strange, but something to celebrate and look forward to, because as long as the US seems to exist at the state that it's in right now, it's collectively terrible for, well, everyone around the world, but people living within the country as well. And I think this great awakening and this darkness is needed for the masses and the collective consciousness to kind of catch up to what's going on. It's not something that's hidden anymore. It's something that's completely out there.
Yeah, one of the eternal truths rooted in this universe of ours is that the darkest part of the night is just before the dawn of a new day. Nadia, you are not on screen. Are you still with us? Okay, she must have stepped away. And I don't see Sarah either. What's going on here? All right. Right now it's just okay. There we go. There's Sarah. Okay. One of the things that makes me feel it gives me some reason for optimism is, aside from the fact that we have this mass agitative awakening that we're seeing expressed in large and growing pockets at different parts of the country, and one of the most, for me, dynamic examples of this has been what took place in the state of Minnesota at a time of the year that was bitter cold, bitter cold. And you had these thousands of folk taking to the streets every day. You had a large population of dark-skinned people, primarily Somali, from the Somali community, and Minnesota has the largest Somali community in the United States. A large swath of that community living, understandably, in a state of fear because of what was being done, how their community was being targeted. But then you had these neighbors, these non-Muslim, non-African, non-Somali neighbors taking to the streets in the thousands, day after day after day, making it very clear that this would not be done in their name. That for me was just so heartwarming. It was heartbreaking to see some of the casualties, the terrible things that ICE was doing on the ground with the full support of and weight of this government. But it was beautiful in all of the ugliness. There was a beauty and a power in seeing the way the community responded, the way neighbors responded. That is what has given me quite a bit of optimism. And then there's something else too, and I like to Sarah, hear your thought on this, given the fact that you are in the Big Apple. The victory of Mamdani at the polls, the victory of Mamdani against all odds, against all the money that the billionaires threw into the pot to keep him from being able to win that election, and him winning anyway. It was a magnificent people's victory. And it also, for me, it underscored the fact that there is a marked difference within the Democratic Party between those who have controlled and do control the party and this growing base of resistance within the party, which outnumbers, the the leadership, the creme de la creme of the Democratic Party. I feel a tremendous amount of optimism as a result of seeing these democratic socialists and others that have been inspired by what Mamdani, with the help of the people, was able to accomplish, and what he has been doing with that newly acquired power thus far. Now, what are your thoughts on it? You're right there in New York City. What are your thoughts?
Well,
Sarah,
there is both the victory of his election, and that's real, but there is the problem of what change he can actually make. Can he actually be allowed to make? And that is always the problem in US political life. There is room at the base. They have to allow it for all sorts of opposition. But at the top, even those who will speak against US wars and policies, they will vote the military budget that robs the cities of the ability to carry out any of the things that Mamdani was calling for, including free buses immediately. That hasn't happened. It gets stopped at the state level and at the budget level, and lower affordable city, lower rents. I haven't seen that. Now, is that Mamdani's fault? No, it's the fault of a whole system that it benefits, of course, the landlords, the banks, the powers that be. So it's possible to run on a ticket, and we see it at the national level. Every politician promises peace, we get war. And at a local level, increasingly, and this is important, political leaders are elected making very concrete economic promises. Are they able to do it? I don't see it happening. That is the problem, that Mamdani's program is caught in an empire going down that has no money for any of those things, and actually far less money than even in times past. When Trump says, no, we got to increase the military budget to now $1.5 trillion, and school lunch programs are not a necessity. Boom. We know exactly where the money is going to come from. Daycare, not a necessity. They're dripping it out. And this is what any political leader who's elected is up against. I know so many people who work tirelessly on this election, day and night, and that was a real gain in terms of people operating, working on it. But can a city administration deliver on what nationally the U.S. role is today? And unfortunately, I don't see that. You can wish a political leader well, and it was a victory in terms of a vote here in New York City that a Muslim is elected. That's a real victory, a real step forward, I think, in terms of confronting all the biases that are ingrained in this society. But at the same time, those expectations of dramatic improvements in the most expensive city in the world aren't happening. The mass transit isn't getting better, and the food prices aren't going down, and the fuel prices are going up, and housing is going definitely up. So anyway, I think that's what we're up against, and it's important to be realistic on it.
Okay, let's hear from you, Nadia, on changes that you are or are not seeing within the Democratic Party along the base of the party.
I think one thing I want to touch on first is about the military budget. As Sarah said, it's like $1.5 trillion. I mean, that's where we could get everything done that we needed in this country. If we spend all of our money going to kill other people, we can't do what we need for this country in terms of healthcare, environmental protection, education, all the things that we need. We build prisons instead of schools, and we also bomb people instead of building hospitals in our own country. And so we really work backwards, and until we really work to fix that, we're going to be in the same rut we're in. And even with the election of Mamdani, another point to also note is that the laws and structures that are in place are designed not to help him succeed. So he's really in many ways walking into a trap that has been laid out for him decades ago. And to really move the needle, we have to not just change the municipal issues, we have to work at the tax code and some of these more discrete issues like trade and housing. And I think unless we look at the bigger picture and look at the nuts and bolts, because the people who are working for war and militarism, they're light years ahead of us. And so we have to really figure out exactly which areas we can tackle and work on them. And a really important part of that is information and people having access to information, seeing where their tax dollars are being spent, because unless we have transparency and accountability of that, there isn't going to be much change within the Democratic Party. The presidential election is pretty much in 2028 into another GOP administration.
Okay, you froze up a little bit there toward the end of your observation.
Yeah, I was just going to add in that in 2028, we could look at another GOP administration like that. That's very possible because everything that we have is like a coin toss.
You said you're expecting another.
No, I said we could. Because the way the election is, it's like a coin toss. It's always so close. You don't know what's going to happen.
Okay. Heena, what are your thoughts on the political climate that we find ourselves in, the strides that have been made within the base of the Democratic Party? I mean, one of the things that that gives me a bit of optimism and that enables me to, or I should say causes me to recognize that there is, despite the fact that, you know, both the Republican and Democratic Party, they represent two wings of the same bird, that one wing is far more diseased and dangerous than the other wing, is the fact that, you know, we have a strong and growing consciousness among the base of the Democratic Party that has been asserting itself. More and more young Democrats who have more of an independent way of thinking from that traditional Democratic way of thinking and doing things. Many of them inspired by the climate that we find ourselves in, this climate of resistance, have been winning elections. And I don't know. I've been seeing reports that there have been some things that Mamdani has been able to accomplish since he's been in office. I wish I had that short list in front of me, but I remember seeing a report that there are many more buses now that are, quote unquote, as his slogan said, fast and free. And I don't know about how fast, but definitely free. I've seen a report that there are more buses on the line that are free. I've seen other some reports on some other indicators that reflect that there has been some positive change taking place in New York. Those a supermarket in one supermarket in each of the four boroughs of New York that are supposed to be catering to the struggling folk within those boroughs, where there has been and continues to be food insecurity, with fresh produce that is more affordable than the traditional supermarkets. I mean, I've been hearing some things. I've been seeing some reports, and inshallah ta'ala, as a result of this conversation, I'm going to do some a little more digging to find out exactly what kind of progress has been made up until now. But I understand the argument that or the point, I should say, that Sarah just made a few moments ago about how deeply ingrained this system is in maintaining the inequality and the oppressive conditions that unfortunately it's been known for. It's known for, but at the same time, I have been seeing and hearing indications that there has been some positive change, and that and the result of Mamdani beating the odds and winning one of the most important political posts in the world, in the city that has the second largest Jewish population in the world. It has inspired something that some positive good can come from. Heena, let's hear from you. your thoughts.
Yeah, no, this is it's a very important question to ask. A lot of people don't know this, but before I got into doing geopolitical analysis and journalism, I was a political organizer for a very long time. And I think for a very long time I had a similar ideology as you. I thought we could vote things out. I thought certain politicians were better than others. I thought certain political parties were better than others. I was one of the founding members of the Muslim Caucus for DSA. I was part of a big organization and did a lot of volunteer work for, Muslims Rise Up to advocate people voting and educating them on, certain politicians and elections and things of that nature. And I think the number one thing that I learned through all those years is that a system that is built to oppress you, never going to give you the tools for, liberation. And so, I respect anyone doing advocacy within, advocating for certain politicians and voting for certain people and educating on elections and things of that nature. But I think something that you see in the Democratic Party and DSA, Democratic Socialists, is neoliberalism is something that's just deeply rooted within, the Democratic Party, whether we're looking at DSA, whether we're looking at certain politicians. Yes, the Democratic Party will always, as Dr. Nadia said earlier, sugarcoat certain things. They will be a little bit more diplomatic. They will really push, candidates that look more like me and other minorities, right, to make it more appetizing per se. But small, fragmented performative measures to keep, the masses happy isn't going to collectively change the discourse. It's not going to overhaul all the major problems. If anything, I think a lot of people may not agree with me on this, but for the sake of being candid, I actually prefer Trump being in office, and I'll tell you why. Is he a lot worse than a lot of Democratic candidates? Sure. But I think whatever Democratic candidates would do, they do it behind closed doors. They do it behind flowery language. They do it behind, neoliberal performance-based measures to keep minorities and other oppressed people happy, right? Like, oh, there's one step forward. We're okay. We can all go to brunch per se. Republicans will come out and say, look, U.S. foreign policy and domestic policy is intrinsically racist. It doesn't care for women's rights. It doesn't care for poverty. It doesn't care for minorities. We are going to do X, Y, and Z, right? Trump will literally go on the mic and say, we're going to bomb this country. We're going to get rid of the civilization. We're going to do X, Y, and Z. We're going to go to Venezuela for oil. Democrats do the exact same thing, but they say they do it for very different reasons. And I think the masses listen to that, right? They don't look at the actions. They're looking at what's being said. Republicans are very open and honest about their hatred. I genuinely do think the Democratic Party is almost just as bad. And I think if we keep leaning towards, well, this politician is better, this political party is better, the progress that needs to be made for like the collective oppressed is never going to happen. I think any change that needs to happen has to be with grassroots movements internally within ourselves. I completely respect, where you're coming from, and maybe you're looking at it from a different perspective than I am. But even Zohran Mamdani, when I researched the Epstein files, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, his mother was in the Epstein files, right? She was going to those parties and stuff, which makes you sit down and wonder, is he someone that we genuinely all voted for and beat all odds? Or is this someone that was handed to us on a platter to think that he's different? Just, some food for thought.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're at the end of today's broadcast, and I wish we had more time to be able to flesh this out. Let me just make something very clear, though, before we end today's broadcast. I am not someone who believes the Democratic Party or any other political party in the United States is a panacea for what ails us. That's not my position at all. It has never been my position. That being said, we have a political system that affords citizens in this country to weigh in and to use aspects of it to make a difference. I don't share the view at all that better for someone like Trump to be in office and the Republican Party to have control of the country because it reveals the true nature of Americanism. When we look at the terrible things and the terribly oppressive things that this administration has done and is doing, and the lives that have been taken. We have in Islamic law the lesser of evils principle for a reason. What constitutes the lesser of evils? That's there for a reason, and it's something that we as Muslims, especially, we need to always be conscious of, and strive to the best of our ability to use it, that principle as much as we possibly can, in order to minimize the impact of the evil that's being committed wherever we happen to be. We're in the United States of America. But no, I don't have any faith in this political system at all, in either of these two parties, but I do recognize one as being far more dangerous and destructive than the other, and it's because one has a significantly greater number of well-meaning folk at the base who are striving to the best of their ability to use it to bring about positive change and to blunt as much of the oppression that's being done against us. SubhanAllah, I apologize for not being as well organized in my thoughts as I should have been for today's conversation. Inshallah ta'ala, I'd like to have you all back for a continuation of this. But I want to thank you for being with us today. And we will have you back. And we will invite you back, Sister Heena and Nadia. And I think Sarah Sarah did say she had somewhere to go at the 2 o'clock hour. And we're there. So the 3 o'clock hour. So I want to thank you. And we end as we always do with that very relevant verse from the Quran that reads, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Wal Asr, Innal Insana Lafi Kusr, Illa Ladina Amanu wa Amalus Salihat wa Tawassaw bil Haqq wa Tawassaw bis Sabr, which means in the translation of the meaning, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, by the token of time through the ages, surely humanity is in loss, except those who believe and do good, and exhort one another to truth, and exhort one another to patiently persevere. Peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum.